Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna do a review of the Mungyo water-soluble oil pastels. I got this set from amazon.com for $20. I'll put a link to this product in the video description below if you wanna try it out. So first I'm gonna do a color chart of these pastels. The reason why I'm doing two swatches of each color is because I want to see how they look when they're applied dry versus when they're mixed with water. They apply very nice and firm, and these colors are heavily pigmented and very creamy. I think you can easily use them as a regular oil pastel without using water at all. So I'll mix one swatch with water. Right off the bat I can tell that I'm gonna like these because the colors are very vibrant and quite thick, and they dry pretty waxy. The only complaint I have is that the color variation is very limited. You don't seem to have that much of a choice in terms of color. I think this is the biggest set they have, and it's just 24 colors. So you can probably make new colors using these, but it's always nice to have different shades right out of the box. Here's a close-up of how the colors look. The first swatch is applied dry and the second one is blend with water. Next I'm gonna do a demo of these pastels. This is the first time I'm using them in a complete painting like this. So it's a completely new medium for me. This painting doesn't have a lot of detailed work. It's mostly just colors and layers because I want to first see how these pastels blend and layer before I'm getting into more detailed work. So as you can see, I start by applying the colors for the sky and blending that with a water brush. And I'm making sure that the right amount of water is in the brush. I constantly wipe off excess water off the brush because if you take too much water you will get more like a watercolor kind of effect, and I prefer the brush to be just damp enough to blend the colors. This way I get a more like an oil pastel painting effect. But if you want to get a watercolor effect from these, then soak the brush properly and blend with a lot of water. So there's no right way to blend these. You can choose a blending technique depending on what kind of effect you want to get. So I'm shooting for a oil painting kind of look, so I'm using water sparingly and I'm applying a lot of layers. I have seen some artists use various blending techniques like paper stumps, tissue papers, baby wipes, and even fingers to blend the water-soluble oil pastels. I think all of these tools work depending on what kind of effect you want to get. Personally, I only like water because things like baby wipes and tissues can wipe a lot of pigment off the paper. That will waste your pastels. Also, since these are water-soluble oil pastels, I feel like the whole idea is to use water to blend them. So I have only just used water. These colors are obviously not free flowing as watercolors, but they definitely mix well in water. But they have a waxy feel to them as well, just like oil pastels. Another thing I noticed about these pastels is that layering works well and layers dry really fast. That makes them very easy to layer because you don't have to wait long periods in between layers. Also, if you add a lot of water, then the colors will look a little bit lighter as they dry. This is kind of obvious because the more water the pigment gets mixed in, the less vibrant they will look, and that is how watercolors also work. But if you apply them dry, they will retain the color vibrance even after they are hardened, just like oil pastels. So it's interesting how these pastels have both oil pastel and watercolor qualities. Another thing is the paper. For this to work, you need a watercolor paper. I found that this paper is not really good for this kind of painting. This is the Winsor and Newton pastel paper and is just about 72 pounds. I feel that the paper is not heavy enough to handle a lot of water. It got really soggy and was beginning to crumble after the third or the fourth layer of color. I feel like this paper is not meant for this kind of use. You can use a more heavyweight watercolor paper or even mixed media paper. Anyway, this paper held up really well up until the last few layers, so anything a little more heavier than this should be okay. And as you can see, I always apply the pastel on the paper and then use water to blend, but this is not the only way to apply these pastels. You can also wet the paper first and then apply the dry pastel on the wet areas. You can even do more detailed work that way because you are applying the pastel directly on the paper. You can also just directly dip the pastel in water and then apply the wet pastel on dry paper. I tried all of these methods in this painting and all of them worked really well. So something I really like about these pastels is that the finish looks and feels somewhat like an oil painting or even an oil pastel painting, and it has this waxy feel to it and has an oily sheen which you can't get from a watercolor painting. I rubbed my finger very firmly on the surface after it was dry, but only a little amount of pigment came onto my fingers. That means this painting is almost fully dry, unlike an oil pastel painting which never fully dries, and also even an oil painting which takes at least an year to completely dry. So I'm actually really surprised and happy with this finish, because these pigments won't move unless you really put some force and rub them off the surface. That means you don't have to use fixatives or frame this under glass like an oil pastel painting. Overall, I like this medium and they are very interesting because they have both oil pastel and watercolor qualities, and I will definitely try them out on different subjects in the future. So that's about it for this video. Please do subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon to get notified of new videos that I try to upload every week. Thanks for watching this and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.